Hi everyone, Bernard here with another Citizen vlog, and it's a City Pass as we delve into the history, back in the history of Manchester City. We're getting to near my time now. We're getting to just the season before. I did know I could have gone to an odd game this season, but was probably still a little bit too young. But I started going in 1965, 66, and we've got to 64, 65. So I may have gone to the odd game this season. I'm not 100% sure one way or the other, and there's no one around now to ask, unfortunately. So here we go. We're going to look at City season 64, 65. Yeah, I mean, it was another season back in the second division. Obviously, we'd been relegated early in the 60s, obviously, and we were hopeful again, as we ever were, that we could bounce back. We always seem to bounce back quite quickly within 1 or 2 or 3 seasons, didn't we? Every time, if you follow my history blogs over time, every time we have gone down, it's not been a long stay in the second division. So obviously we were hoping at the second bite of the cherry here to get up this season, 1964-65. We finished 6th the season before. Obviously, Leeds and Sunderland had won promotion from last season, and we'd finished season obviously not too bad. Was it on 46 points there, 17 points behind the champions and 15 points behind Sunderland. So there was potential there, wasn't there, to actually do a little bit better this year. Obviously, the 60s we've been talking, and up to the Second World War. City were the club, really. Man United weren't sort of up in the same sort of level as City as far as support, etc. But since the war and various reasons which we've gone through, please check out my other little history vlogs. United now were the glamour club. I mean, even in England, never mind Manchester, they were the sort of the 60s sort of a glamour time, didn't we? And obviously, but United became the more glamorous year after year. And obviously with City sat now in the second division, United actually winning things now in the first division. Yeah, they got that mantle from City. And City were in a bit of the doldrums, and this season more than anything emphasises that, I think, as we look through the 1964-65. There was even the ignominy, even the insult of actually, there was talk, a couple of directors were sounding out United about a potential merger, City and United, and move away from Main Road and actually both play at Old Trafford. I mean, this is unprecedented. This is what they were talking about, actual mergers. I mean, fortunately, obviously the fans were all against it totally, and obviously most of the directors were at the time, most of the people on the board, so nothing came of it, but there were little murmurings about doing it. No real massive signings early doors. We signed a gentleman called Dave Bacuzzi. Please, you do watch my Citizen vlogs. We did obviously he died this year. I did a little special on Dave Bacuzzi. We signed him for 20,000 from Arsenal, which wasn't a mean amount of money. 20,000, not most expensive, but no, it's not a small change. Off the pitch, I mean, you'd look at the game on the 31st of August against Leyton Orient, a 3-4 loss. And I must admit, up till about the age of 12, I wanted, apart from being a footballer for City, obviously, I always wanted to be a fireman as well. So it's an interesting advert in the programme against Leyton Orient on the 31st of August. Obviously up to £730 per annum, rising to £937 an annum. Big money, isn't it? So what's that? It's about 15 quid a week. 15 quid a week, that's not bad, is it? Really excellent prospects of promotion to officer grade with increased pay, 3 weeks paid holiday, a generous pension, excellent sports and social activities. Yeah, not risking your life though or anything like that. But it was a nice. I'll have these old adverts in these old programs, and obviously now I'm doing this little thing. It's nice to look back at these programs, isn't it? Yeah. So yeah, we did lose that game 4-3, unfortunately. But yeah, that did pique me interest, certainly up to the age of 12 to 13. But once I had to wear these glasses, I had to sort of put the thoughts of being a fireman sort of behind me. Actually, from about the age of 14, I was looking at other things by then. Although obviously I do look back and wish, perhaps if my eyes had been better, I might have done that anyway. So, yeah, I mean, City starting lineup for the season. I mean, basically it was Dowd in goal, although we also had Ogley. Bacuzzi played, Gomersall, although we did have Pardo as well playing. Cheetham, but we did occasionally have Batty playing. Kennedy, Oakes, Connor, but Wagstaff played some games. Kevin and Murray. with Crossan playing some games. Obviously, he came later. We'll talk about he joined us in a bit. Gray and Young. So there was some other additions. One notable addition to the sort of squad as well. To the not a purchase, but someone who came through the ranks. But more on that in a moment. Off the pitch, the fans' discontent was quite obvious. A main road defeat to Huddersfield on the 17th of October. Actually, we ended up getting, the fans got a warning. Obviously, there was trouble at the match, and the fans felt it necessary, or the FA felt it necessary to issue a warning where City had to put it on signs outside the ground, and obviously put it in the programmes. So just reading through that little warning: for misconduct by spectators at the league match versus Huddersfield Town on the 17th of October 1964, the club has been ordered to post warning notices in prominent positions on the ground from Monday, 2nd November 1964 for 1 month, and to print in the official club programme for the same period a warning to spectators similar to those contained in the warning notices, which read as follows: the FA notice to players, officials and spectators. This is an extract from the rules that they're just reiterating. Players, officials and spectators are only allowed to take part in or attend matches on condition that they observe the rules of the association, and every affiliated association or club is required to observe and enforce such rules. Every association or club is responsible to the council for the action of the players, officials and spectators, and is required to take all precautions necessary to prevent spectators threatening or assaulting officials and players during or at the conclusion of matches. An official or an association or club referee, linesman or player shall not bet on any football match in associations and clubs. I think that was going back to the old match fixing with City, wasn't it? To prevent betting and the use of objectionable language by spectators. In the case of the breach of this rule, any player, official or spectator may be removed from any of the ground, and such force used as may be necessary for the purpose of effecting such remedies. Such removal. It does go on from there, but that just shows you, obviously, there was discontent, obviously, with the fans. I don't think it was anything particularly aimed at the players there. I think it was obviously, and we can see from the crowds later, the average crowds for the season. Obviously, the people were voting with their feet, unfortunately. So that had to be posted for a month. So a bit of a reprimand for the fans there. Very, very sad, isn't it? Sadly, it was going to be a mixed season. By the 17th of November, we'd won 8, lost 8, and drawn 1. So sort of it's really mishmash for season, wasn't it? We had a win or two, and then a loss, or 2 losses and two wins. It was just typical of that. Was a 5-2 win at Preston North End, and a 4-0 win against Ipswich at home. And then these are quickly followed by 2 losses: 3-2 at Plymouth and 4-2 at home to Bolton. So it was a really mix-up of a season, and obviously all hopes of finishing in the promotion places were fast diminishing by halfway through the season. A particular low point was a third-round FA Cup defeat to lowly Shrewsbury Town, or Shrewsbury Town, you pronounce it which way you pronounce it. We actually drew at 1-1 at Main Road in January in the third round of the FA Cup, but actually went out to Shrewsbury 3-1 away from home. So things on the pitch weren't great, were they? And this defeat, just to add insult to injury, this defeat was followed by a game against Swindon Town at Main Road, and this was notable. Not only did Swindon beat City, which is fair enough, obviously City were that sort of inconsistencies this season, but one of the Swindon's 2 goals was scored by a certain Mike Summerby. And obviously it was noticeable. The crowd was the lowest ever. It was one of the lowest City crowds ever, 8,015 people. So obviously I think Mike Summer was quizzed about this, and I think he sort of commented when he did join City about, obviously he knew he wasn't going to base it on that night sort of thing. 8,000 rattling around a ground that could hold 60-odd thousand at the time, obviously. So yeah, Mike Summerby, but obviously didn't put him off coming in, did it? But interesting enough, the crowd of 8,000, it was actually not just the low morale of the crowds, there was actually supposedly a bus strike that night. So I don't think it came off, but there was warnings of a bus strike. So most people thought, I'll not bother. I'm not even gonna try. The weather was terrible as well. So I mean, it wasn't just the fans staying away. It was obviously a combination of effects that made it so it was an 8,000 crowd. I mean, there's still investment. We bought, and I've mentioned him earlier, Johnny Crossan, who went on to captain City, was bought from Sunderland for almost 40,000, £38,500 on January 22, which was a significant amount of money. And there was another significant date for players as well. In a very average season, we had a debut of a certain player on the 12th of March in a 2-2 draw at Cardiff. We had the debut of a certain Mr. Mike Doyle, made his first appearance for City in the 1964-65 season. By the Easter schedule, which usually we had 3 games in 4. I mean, the Winds now, don't they? 3 games in 4 days at Easter time. City were 12th again. Similar sort of thing, played 37, won 15, lost 16, drawn 6. So pretty much for every game they lost, obviously they won one, and obviously they drew a handful sort of thing. So there was a trip to Crystal Palace. Was a 2-0 loss. That was actually during one of these 3 and 4 games, followed by a home game the following day, a 1-1 draw against Coventry City, and then Palace. Actually, we played Palace again at home. So within 4 days, we played Palace again with a 1-1 draw. So a defeat followed by 2 draws was typical. The season was sort of summed up, I think, in the editorial in the Coventry City programme, the game against Coventry City, where it sort of just goes on to say, this will bring us to the end of a disappointing season at Moss Side, a season which opened so brightly when after a narrow 2-1 defeat at Charlton on the opening day, we romped to our best fixture of the season with a resounding 6-0 thrashing of Leyton Orient. But that was a result which was reversed only 2 games later when we lost 4-3 at Lorient's Brisbane Road Stadium. So that was what we mentioned earlier on. Unfortunately, that appears to have been the pattern of things throughout the season. Win one game, lose the next. This sequence went on for 11 games until ending with a 2-2 draw at Coventry, and that was the start of our best unbeaten run, with following 3 games all being excellent victories, with the attack finding its true scoring potential. Sad to say, the fierce goal pace of 13 in those 4 unbeaten games was not maintained, and the forwards have rarely found their touch since, although as we have pointed out in previous editorials, our cause was not helped by a disastrous crop of injuries. So obviously the editorial there, it's not written by the manager, it's put together. There's no one claims to write the editorial. Obviously, it's usually one of the newspaper journalists does that anyway. So yeah, it was going to be a bit of a mix-up of a season. And obviously at the end of that, there you go. I mean, Mr. Poyser, our manager, George Poyser, hadn't been there too long. I think his best position was 6th in the 2nd division from the season before. Actually resigned. It was too much. Obviously still with the fans' discontent, the crowds dwindling. And obviously there was talk, wasn't there? There was a lot of optimism. There was talks of a certain Peter Doherty returning as manager of City. There was talks of a gentleman, a little known, not as well known then, called Bill Shankly coming to become City's manager. So City finished dead middle, as you'd expect with that sort of performances, where they win as many as they lose and the draw in the other one. They finished dead middle of the table in 11th spot, which summed up the league season, didn't it, really? In the League Cup, obviously the League Cup was now being played. City went out the first hurdle at home to a 5-3 loss to Mansfield Town in front of a crowd of 8,789. So a few hundred more than that at obviously Swindon game, which went down in history. So there you go. And the crowd, well, to make things worse, City's average crowd had dropped to just 14,753. 14,753 was our average crowd. And yes, you guessed it, our little friends from across the road, our little friends from Trafford actually won the First Division title this season. Could things get any worse? I mean, the crowd's at the lowest ever. United just clinched the First Division title. Could it get worse? It probably could. So not initially, perhaps, but obviously, we thought we were at a low ebb then, didn't we? So City were in desperate need for a little small miracle, weren't we? Hopefully, perhaps Bill Shankly will come. Hopefully, some new manager would actually pull us out of this. We'll get the crowds back. We'll get City buzzing again. Perhaps a new manager and perhaps a new coach as well. Who knows? But please, that's the next one, isn't it? That's the next little history vlog. That's when we look at 1965-66, which is the first season that yours truly can remember going to the games, and yours truly was there with his dad in the Platt Lane stand on the bench seats. Always the same bench seat, always the same row, got in as soon as the gates opened every match. Absolutely fantastic. With me flask of Oxo or my flask of Bovril, whatever it was. I think it was Oxo. We couldn't afford Bovril. I think it was more expensive. But more on that next time, obviously, as we look back on the history of City, 1965-66. Anyway, thanks for joining me today. I hope you enjoyed that. Please check out my little links. And if you're more... I post all my stuff on Twitter and Facebook. So, but if you're more into Facebook, just friend me on Facebook at Bernard Deneen, and I friend everyone back on there. So that'll be fantastic. And if you ever get a chance to look at my movie game, nostalgia.com, my website for old rare DVDs, movie posters from the 90s and 2000s, and board games, that'll be thumbs up to you. Thanks very much for your help. Anyway, thanks for joining me today for this little look at City history. A pretty dire season, wasn't it? 1964-65. I promise you things are going to get better. Things are going to get better before they get worse again. I can promise you that. So join me next time for that. Anyway, thanks for watching. We're going to do this today. Have a great one. Look after yourselves, look after your friends, look after your family. Let's all look after each other. Until you join me again for another Citizen past or present vlog. This is Bernard saying goodbye for now. Look after yourself. Stay safe, please. Bye-bye.